the biggest deal now is to go and win in New Zealand. Because win in New Zealand will most probably debunk them. No, it becomes very important. No, it's important. Because, I mean, that's what put Ireland on the map.
Yeah.
As proper contenders. They were the first team to win a 3-match series in New Zealand since Australia in 1986. That is like that. It tells you of the difficulty of that particular task. It's not impossible, but it's difficult.
Yeah. Hello and welcome to yet another episode of the All Rounders SA podcast with myself, Pilasanda Sekaba, and of course, Nono Pongolo in the far corner. Hey, we've been busy, man. We've been busy, but
you've been busy, Chief. Speak for yourself.
You've done a World Cup final, so you've been very busy. You know?
You've done 2 World Cups, Chief. So we actually need to give props to this guy.
No.
Last 2 months have been,
it's been
unbelievable.
Yeah, no, but we're back. We're back with another really great episode, and we've got a really great guest with us today.
He's also coming from France.
He's also landing
He was in
from
France.
Parlez-vous français?
Don't try.
That'll be very terrible. But he is a Rhodes University graduate, so that makes him an honorary Makanda person. But we are trying to see. Oh, you didn't. You only wrote for the Grow Coats, ne?
Yes. Please respect Walter Student University. Respect. I'm also Vitsi, so please, I've got to post.
So the Vits supersedes.
No, Vusu first, by the Vusu first. Without Vusu, there's no Vits.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
We must get it right.
It's the all black and white from Eastern Cape.
Usebenzile pa ku Vuvuzela.
No. Remember, at Vets Kaloga, I was doing mid-career honors. So
Okay.
I was already
So
working.
you couldn't do work there, yeah.
And
But
PCCF, what else can I the stuff that we did at Wusu that helped part of the career, but that's where everything started.
Wusu All Blacks.
Wusu.
Yes. But he is in Zalolwana Yasem Tanzania in the Eastern Cape, East London. Sometimes people they say demarcation in Tanzania and East London it's totally different. Like it's not even part of East London.
No, it is. It's 20 k's out.
So it's not part of East London.
Yeah, it's 20 k's out.
So you don't say that I'm from East London.
No,
I'm from Tanzania.
Yeah, because I'm Tanzania.
Oh my goodness.
You're gonna say what's the motive? Sabuza P, M Tanzania, P. No, and if you're from there, it's just like you're from PE.
Yeah.
Also get by. You're not gonna say I don't want to buy. What's the Kabeha now they call it?
Yes.
What's that? What's it is?
No, but those are townships in Ekabeh.
Yes, but are they in Kabeha?
Yes,
CBD?
they are.
Are they in Kabeha CBD? It's the mountain now? No. Tanzania is part of East London. But it's a standalone site.
Ndiyaqala uyibona igest efika isilwa.
Ladies and gentlemen, please put your digital hands together for Khanyiso Tshwaku.
Freedom fighter.
Yeah. He's a senior sports writer at News 24. I got that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
News 24 Sport. Yeah.
Very senior writer at News 24 Sport.
Well-traveled.
Well traveled.
What really means?
Covered his first ever global tournament in France.
No, second.
You said it was your first.
First Rugby World Cup.
Oh,
I was
first
at the
Rugby World
Yes,
Cup.
I was at the Champions Trophy in 2013.
That's not a World Cup.
It's a tournament.
It's not a World Cup.
It's a global
ICC.
tournament.
It's not a World Cup.
It's a global tournament.
ICC, yeah, in Pakistan.
Kamo, thanks a lot for sparing a bit of time for us, Brad. We really do appreciate it. And I guess the basis of this invitation is really just to touch base on what's been happening around the world, including, of course, that Rugby World Cup win by the Springboks in France. There's so many other things that have happened in between that. There's been a semi-final at the Cricket World Cup in India recently for the Proteas. But let's start with that Rugby World Cup because in many ways it's transcended South Africa into a realm that not many nations have been before. Of course, it's their record 4th Rugby World Cup title, but it also puts them into rugby heritage. I mean, we speak about Australia and cricket and them having cricket heritage, but for South Africa, this Rugby World Cup win puts him on a different plateau. Your experience in France, how was it following the box for 2 months in France? How hectic was the schedule? But also, what did you learn from just following and being in the midst of a successful and historic campaign like that?
Look, it's a once in a lifetime, whichever way you look at it. I mean, you looked at the Japan World Cup, the colleagues who were there, the experience that they shared about the World Cup. The thing is with the World Cup, you don't go there with the hope that you're going to win.
Yes.
Because you will be disappointed. I think you would have seen, particular countries would have felt that they would have done enough before the World Cup to win the World Cup. But the thing with tournament sports, and I think we will have learned from Australia's example, is that you have to actually play the tournament to win the tournament. Regardless of what you do before the tournament, what matters is what you do in the tournament. And I think what becomes critical is that the lessons that you take from Australia and South Africa as teams, I'll get back to my personal experiences. The lessons that you take from teams like Australia and South Africa is that you are more than happy to cede inches in between World Cups. But if you're able to gain the yards back, like they did, I mean, I remember there's a friend of mine, I'll actually punt his name over your cheek. He actually was very clear from the get-go that whatever Australia do at the beginning, Sanuba Hoya, because what matters what they do at the end.
Yes.
And he got it spot on. He got it spot on. And I think the Boks pretty much did the same, because if you draw parallels in what Australia did, Australia chased in the last 4 games. If you want to win a World Cup, you have to chase. They did it 4 times, and they won. The Springboks had to claw back 2 deficits. In the semi-final, in the quarterfinal, semi-final, that they did. And they got a lead and they hung on to it. So there's always a fixation sometimes, and I think with South African sports and around the world, in that sometimes winning the tournament matters. But how you win the tournament matters more. I think what we've realized over the past 2 World Cups, I mean, you could even look at the Soccer World Cup. Argentina didn't do anything out of the ordinary. Their mission was to move. Didn't they lose an opening game? I think they did.
They lost the opening game,
It's been a history of losing up front now.
Exactly.
In the recent years.
Exactly. So at the end of the day, it's not about... You'll dissect later, in later stages, what could have been done better to win the World Cup or the World Cups. The fact remains, just go out there, you find a method that works, you stick to it. And then if you need to adapt, you adapt accordingly. And I think probably that's pretty much, that was our experience as journalists, because the first thing we did as journalists, that we stuck together. We stuck together because there were no differences, to be honest. As colleagues, Yanti Koning, Liam Delcam, Gronier, Valen Kurt, Uyolule Koshe while he was there, Percival Young while he was there, Matt Pearson, them. You always found that you become a team, and you quintessentially become part of the team. I mean, if you looked at Jacques' Twitter yesterday, where they put up that picture that he took after, I mean, everyone that gave us, I wouldn't say a weird look, but it kind of felt that we were part of that success because we were there from day one. I mean, as soon as we landed in Toulon, we had to go attend a press conference at 6 p.m. That's Sunday, the 3rd of September. And we're like, okay, has the World Cup truly started? It didn't feel like it until we got to Marseille. Then when we got to Marseille, like, hey, it's
rugby.
I didn't think it told me that. It felt like that. But it's one of those where we've been watching the Boks from various quarters over the past 3 years, because they only played rugby for the past 3 years. We've been close yet far. Close yet far. Close, I mean, the British and Irish Lions series was probably the most furthest series we've watched, yet we were also close to the action because of COVID-19. And we also saw how the steps were built up because we were at the Georgia test. I mean, even though you watched the game at the ground, it didn't quite feel like you were. And I think with the World Cup, even with the Proteas, for example, I mean, there was that. I actually missed the Sri Lanka series because I was in 2020 because I had COVID. You often felt with the national teams you were close yet far. And I felt that with the World Cup in particular, the COVID-19 just brought on a different way
Yeah.
of having to watch and cover tournaments. And I think the virtual world of reporting made it quite a different experience.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, we were there. We tracked the team. We followed them to wherever they needed to be. I mean, you looked at one of the places where we were at Bordeaux.
Yeah.
We were quite upset that the box only actually gave us 4 days in Bordeaux because it's probably the best place we kind of liked. We like,
Wine country.
yeah, look, I mean, you see it. I don't drink wine, except, well, I'll pair it with a few necessary meals, but I'm not a wine person
Yeah.
per se. But, I mean, it's a 6-hour train trip
Yeah.
from Marseille to Bordeaux.
6 hours.
I mean, look, it's a drive to Durban, but, I mean,
Yes.
but if you look at it,
luxury.
Yeah.
not comfort luxury per se, but if you think about it, it's a 6-hour train trip on a TGV. That thing's motoring at 280 km per hour.
Well,
So
okay.
how are you going to feel that trip? Maybe in the last hour because you're like, okay, your mind's at the destination.
Yeah.
You won't feel it that much. But yeah, look, it was a very nice experience.
Before you get started, I mean, I think the nice part, I think the three of us here have, I mean, I come from the playing side, got into broadcasting, I got to know this guy from the broadcasting side. You're also my colleague at the other side, Auckland Park. But at the end of the day, I mean, we sit here in the same kind of space. I mean, talking about the game, and we have the passion for the game. But I, as a message, I mean, to young black kids there, and anyone actually who's interested in terms of your industry, being a journalist, what does a day-to-day look like? Especially in the World Cup, because I mean, you said like you rocked up, you arrived, straight to a press conference, and I'm sure you still had some deadlines to deal with.
It's a mobile office. It's just a mobile office.
Yeah.
Because what you do in the World Cup is pretty much what we do every day. There's a media schedule. You work according to the media schedule. You attend training. It's a normal day in the office. But and I'll quote what my nephew says. Kamva will always say, Takimu.
Takimu.
Yeah. Yes, that
Don't
prefix
malu,
very-
man.
Yeah. It's all right. It's very important that he always mentions that. He always says your job feels like a hobby.
Yeah.
And I remind him that it's because I love what I do. And I took steps with the help of people along the way to ensure that because you don't get to any sort of level in a professional environment without people helping you along the way. I was figuring So like back to the World Cup, it just treated like any normal day in the office, but a day in the office traveling. We have there's routines. The routines are obviously different because of Orlando. Because of being at the World Cup, the routines are different. It felt like it's normal test match week. You know how we work in a test match week. We are asked about Monday there's a press conference, Tuesday with a press conference, Wednesday it's training, Thursday it's team announcement. Or actually that's actually under the old regime. The way you look back for Heineken and stuff, Heineken and Alistair, because that's when I started doing covering test match rugby in the Heineken.
Dark days.
Dark days. They were full of lessons. I mean, do you remember that even it's changed a bit because remember that on Mondays, and under the Heineken in particular, it was Dr. Craig Roberts and the player.
Yeah.
And I think with the Paya acting that press conference now pretty much becomes null and void. And then you'd have an assistant coach and the player will be. Then it's media free day will start. And then Thursday's team announcement, and then Friday it's Lando. Captain's presser. I mean, in the Jacques and Rassi era, it's get the team out of the way. And
how good is that for you, by the way? Is that better where the team, or is it gives you something more to talk about as a build up for the way?
To think about it, that much they make it very clear that they pick the team on the Sunday. And
they announce it to the players.
Yeah, they announce to the players on Sunday. And then if you can't train on the Monday, you can't play, which is probably the most important message that they've learned, is that they don't want to drag your fitness through the week.
We need to keep that fitness part for later.
But it's very important. You know, it's that kind of messaging that is unambiguous.
Yeah.
It's very important, unambiguous messaging. And I think if you're a player and you're exist in an environment where they tell you, if you're not fit on a Monday,
Yeah.
I think you then realize that entire week becomes very important. You're going to need to get your fitness back up. For the next game,
I'm ready.
for the next Monday, because you're playing on a Sunday, which means that the program starts on Tuesday.
Yeah.
That Tuesday, you are fit and ready.
Yeah.
And then, only then, you are available for selection. So, back to World Cup, I mean, it's a normal work day, but it's a different work day because you're doing everything on the go.
Yeah.
You literally, wherever you sit, if it's a press conference, that's your office.
Yeah.
If you at a restaurant, that's your office. If you in a train, that's your office.
Yeah.
So everywhere you are, it's an office. So it was just transplanting, and I think what's helped significantly was the fact that I was on the year in tour so last year following the box, and I think it kind of helped bridge a significant gap of understanding of how to get around, because the most important thing about touring is knowing how to get around. People get lost. I got lost. Yeah, boom. It's like a song. Excuse me. And what became important and what we did is that you get on the phone. Google is probably the most important tool one can ever have in life, because Google took us to wherever we needed to be. If we needed to catch a train,
You know what time?
Train times.
not even times.
Yeah.
Times under concern. Stations, which train to catch, where to catch it is very important. So Ixesha doesn't become an issue. Sometimes time does become, because, for example, the box stayed quite out of town in Paris, so there were particular trains that you needed to catch, and you needed to get to a station at a certain time, and then you had a certain amount of time to walk to the venues. So that's when time became an issue. But Google, whoever created Google, it's something I should know, but for some reason, I think Google Maps was probably one of our best friends on that tour.
Yeah. And from arrival, News 24 looked after everything, or is there stuff that you have to sort out in between?
No. Remember that the entire trip is funded by the company. Yes. So
train trips,
everything.
not to claim back. It's sorted.
Alice.
Okay.
That's why, like, the gratitude I have for the company in backing me to go to a World Cup. They backed me to go to the end of year tour. They backed me to go to a World Cup. I mean, they backed me to go to Currie Cup final. I mean, the Currie Cup final I went to this. It was my first Currie Cup final in 10 years. I did 2 consecutive ones in 2012, 2013. Some in the City Press. I went to Durban and Cape Town for Province Sharks. After that, 10 years, I didn't do a Currie Cup final. But I understood that in our line of work, you will go from the high of a final and go to an NFT game. And I mean, I traveled to, where's people in now? Where this other team plays?
Welcome.
Not Velcom. I haven't been to Velcom in a while. There's an NFT game that I did. It was Maritzburg United, and I forgot this other NFT team. Kwamhlanga. But I actually did an NFT game, Kwamhlanga. Which was one of the promotion relegation playoffs. And you know, there's always an idea sometimes, that, especially from people from the outside, there's a picking and choosing of games. Sometimes we pick and choose. Sometimes you look at a game and you're like, this game has got so much significance. It may look unimportant to someone, but for the context of what it may bring to a league, because like I took a very big interest in the promotion relegation playoffs, having covered in Maritzburg when I stayed in Maritzburg, in Durban. Having watched the Cape Town Spurs in the cool, I was like, I'm actually kind of interested in how this will pan out, because I also understand the historical and cultural significance of a Cape Town Spurs back in the DStv Premiership. And therefore I was like, when there was a game to do Kwamhlanga, can I go do this game? Let me make the trip to Kwamhlanga. There's so much at stake from a South African football perspective. And I mean, and they're struggling now. But you look at what Cape Town Spurs has given to South African football.
Lots of heritage.
Exactly. I mean, they had a significant number of players. David Nyati, Andre Arends, Sean Bartlett. Those guys came from Spurs and won the 96 AFCON. So I look back. So people may say, "Hi, Kumnandi World Cup." There's a lot of work that goes in, and then I won't say you work for the privilege, but the hard work doesn't end there. It's not like Bangogo, I've gone to World Cup and achieved. Yeah. It's back to square one. It's like, and for you being a first class cricketer, every game is a new innings. I mean, you won the toss, bat ball first. The pitch here won't play the same way it did the week before. It's a totally new challenge.
Yeah. And there's nothing that humbles you than like this game, especially coming from a high of 100 and even the second innings,
Second innings, the pitch will behave differently. I mean, you can ask India right now. The pitch will behave differently over the course of a game. Yeah. So we'll excel up over the course of a day, the course of a career. Yeah. So now, if people see me at a PSL game and covering a PSL game, I'm there because I love what I do. Yeah. I'm there because the but. The fact that I mean, I quit engineering I wasn't great at it anyway. Let me put up a quick disclaimer. I passed everything else but the basics.
So it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Because at the end of the day, when I did journalism, I didn't fail a course. Yeah. So, fine.
Yeah. Kamo, tell us the importance of finding a balance between being really critical about something and also educating readers and viewers, because I mean Nons comes from a professional cricket environment, and some of the things that people might have wrote about him, he would have felt that they're being a little bit too harsh. From a journalist point of view, how do you find the balance between educating people and also finding a critical point where you're saying this player is underperforming because of this and this and this and this, but he still has the necessary talent to get to the point that we all expect him to reach. Finding the balance, how do you do that? How long has it taken you to be able to find that skill of being balanced but also very informative?
Be human. Remember that at the end of the day, the person you're criticizing, the group you're criticizing are human beings. If you're going to treat them like objects and write about them like objects, they will treat you like objects in return. Yeah. It's very important that yes, you need to be honest about shortcomings. Yeah. Address those shortcomings, explain what they are. But you also need to be in a position to explain whether you understand how they are trying to remedy those shortcomings. Yeah. I mean, if you look at the example that's been made of Tema Bavuma this week, with his fitness, I mean, as Unono said, we'll get back later to that. A very critical debate emerged over captains. I mean, if you've played cricket long enough, if you've played cricket at Cape League level, C, B, A team level, first team level, you know exactly that the captain is never dropped because of form. That we know that it is a truism of cricket. It's not a truism that will change just because kufunwa bakuchinjwa. There are certain things in sport that are set and cast in stone. Yes, they change every so often. I mean, when you look back at the history of World Cups, name a captain who was dropped in the tournament because of a lack of form. There's no one. I mean, the defenses for and against Utemba were some of the defenses were critical, but also had the necessary human touch and context. Some were just literally very weird takes. They were weird takes. And you look at those takes, Uyos Buzba, how far or close are you to the game? Yeah. There's always a conversation of going to press conferences, going to training, and how that impacts on our work. As mundane as it looks to someone, when you're at a training session, even if it's 15 minutes,
you get to see.
You see things that others don't see. Yeah. And they play a very big role in informing how one writes. So you could be at the top of an ivory tower and criticize, but are you criticizing from a view of you only seeing the full stop? Or you're actually close and you're seeing that there's a lot more to that particular full stop. Yeah. And I think what social media has done, it's blurred that line significantly. And let's be honest, all three of us have been caught up. All of us in the industry
absolutely.
at some stage have been caught up, because we at a point where context has become so important. In that way, people are so married to their opinions. They get so worried about the fact that that opinion can and will burn it out of the truth. And it happens with us, because we'll carry an opinion. I'll carry an opinion, and I'll speak to a player. And I realize that, you know what? Our real conversation, this player's right. And that will have to change my opinion. And then you express that opinion with your knowledge. And then someone else will say, Oksala yondit. And unfortunately, that thing doesn't work. It's one of the things that I've realized, especially when I did my honors degree course. Critical thinking is such an important facet.
It's got an
not
honors
just
degree. It's from Wits.
Yeah, it's not just dude, I mean, it's nothing. My brother's got a PhD. I'm not the most skilled academic. I mean, my mom's got an important degree. My aunt's a doctor, so dipangi
journalism. Came up before you continue. I just also want to add on to that. I think it's a critical question, because how has now social media shaped the way that you have, gone about your work? Because, I mean, when you started the industry, social media was still something that, was still coming up. Now it's a critical source of information where people have these kind of debates, have these opinions, and it sort of in many ways dilutes the essence of what your job is to inform people. But they can say, but I already can get that on social media. How has social media shaped the way that you do your work so that you remain the credible journalist that you are?
I wouldn't say it's diluted. It's actually now it's started to raise the importance of why journalism remains journalism.
Yeah,
actually.
Because at the end of the day, social media is a cesspit of opinions.
Yeah.
That will fight the truth fight the truth and facts at any given matter. Because at the end of the day, people can say what they want on social media until such time someone then flashes you with a lawsuit or they retract.
Yeah.
We are bound.
500,000.
Yeah. As Prapule would say, Prapule Mkine would say, yeah. Rabongs Makasela would say, yeah. We are bound by the press code.
Yeah.
As broadcasters, BCCSA.
Yeah.
So we can't say things ezingasile. We can't do that. And we know that we can't do that because without credibility, we trade on credibility. Yeah, boy. So it becomes very important that you have to let social media. Because it is a cesspit where people will say things behind the mic, behind an avatar.
Yeah.
We need to be in a position at
the end of
your name's there. You say something on TV, your face is there.
Yeah.
And we need to be able to sift in between what is. I mean, the going truism is also the truth that there's your version, there's his version, there's my version, then there's a truth.
Yeah.
The truth will lie somewhere in between. The essence of journalism has not changed. Social media has opened up a very different outlet. It has opened up a different aspect where people have voices, where people who may not have had voices have voices and have opinions that they can air. But the key thing with opinions is that you may have an opinion, but it must be rooted in fact and truth. And our job as Ndatili has become very important in that we need to write the truth as best as we can. We need to speak the truth as best as we can. Because at the end of the day, you can write something on social media. Walla, in. We know for a fact that there's a story, you answer the 5 W's in the H.
Yep.
You still need to afford a person in a room to comment.
Yeah.
The basics, as Mr. Volk once said, the principal now at Sabon Primary, in the face of changing times, the need to stay true to core principles will always remain. And that's the essence of journalism. Because people will have websites, they'll have blogs. I mean, even podcasting at the end of the day, it still forms part of that. But you can't sit on a platform like this and spew vitriol. You
Yeah.
need to be in a position, but if you say something, I want to back it up.
Yeah.
Where are your facts?
Responsibility.
Exactly, and that's where the difference lies between social media and journalism. We still have the responsibility to write fairly and accurately and represent all sides as best as we can. And a social media outlet, because people want to take what they want to take, because at Kabeleni, people have agendas, people have a way of thinking that they're married to.
Yeah.
If a particular thing speaks to a particular way of thinking, you will then exist in that echo chamber. I mean, one of my biggest concerns that I've noticed on Facebook in particular, there are a lot of sites that I at some point was actually telling an acquaintance that these guys are just making up quotes. And I attend some of these media events.
Yeah.
And I'm like, we've been to media events long enough to know how guys speak.
Yes.
Yeah, but you know how guys speak, you know how they train, you know how, at certain clubs, but there's a certain way that they've been trained to speak to the media. Some players at certain clubs, franchises, unions speak freer than others because there's a particular culture output that allows them to do so. Which way born, and then you're like, no, man. You're like, no,
Can't
man.
be.
And then you look at the comments and you're like, people are actually
buying
they buy this.
It's exactly the danger of it now, is that where someone, I mean, there's a colleague of not someone who works in your guys' space who, I'm not going to mention names, threw out stuff. And you just see the retweets and the comments on that particular thing, and you ask yourself, and I mean, some of your colleagues responded, for example, saying this person hasn't been to a press conference in years, but has the power to throw things like that, and people respond to it. So that's the danger of it, is that some of it is misinformation or not even accurate. But
it goes back to what Tupila says, using the pen responsibly. Yeah. Because I'm not in the business of bashing colleagues. Yeah. We help each other.
Yeah.
So every so often, if there's a colleague who has a take, we have a responsibility to also call each other into order. But you don't have to do so on a public platform. I mean, in any sort of office environment. We may be journalists, we may work in the media space, but we're just like any other orderly operating environment where unendlela funeke silungisene ngayo. Ba umuntu nebatha ngapha uyabizela ecaleni man uthi no man madala man isinti man. Uhle apha ukexakeka pha masiqhubeni kodwa. So it becomes a worry that it goes back to what we said, that being at the coalface of the sport gives you such a different opinion of how things operate. I mean, you would have read the stuff that was coming from Dennis van Staden report. You read Heinz with Sport 24, News 24 Sport. You read Telford, Crick Buzz, Stuart Hayes for Times Live, Ofados from ESPN Cricket Info. You realize that, especially in the aftermath of the semi-final, you're like, they actually had a better first-hand view of what transpired, how it transpired, how it built up. And therefore, media companies are hard pressed because and especially now in the face of social media, where izinto ziyaphuma, and then the fine line has to be balanced, has to be finely tread in terms of what you put out, what you keep for exclusivity. What the two World Cups showed, from my perspective and my colleagues' perspective who were at the Cricket World Cup, I mean, look at the coverage you binge at the World Cup last year from a newsroom. That was wonderful coverage. The guys were literally on the ground. Yeah. And there's certain coverage that you get from being on the ground that is so rewarding. It's so enriching, because there are certain things those bonayo that a viewer doesn't see. Yeah. And when you explain it to them, they're like, this is new. I want to know this. Yeah. You see. And I mean, now, I know that on the continent here, it's very different. I mean, I listened to the stories of the guys who followed the Sundowns when they won the CAF Champions
Yeah.
League. I mean, those stories were amazing. When you sit down and you listen to Obratomkwe and Tim Molube and stuff. And I mean, you should listen to Lift when he speaks about Lift Chibam.
West Side.
When he speaks about African trips. There's a trip that they had once where they missed a flight and then they got stranded in Lagos. I mean, those are no. You must tell that it's an insane story.
Yeah.
That you listen to those experiences, you realize that readers aren't there, but they want to see, they want to feel those things.
Yeah.
Because there's a certain level of seeing things. Is practically what now we as journalists in this particular era that we live in have to do.
Yeah.
Siyahamba, siyabona, masicela basibone intoni,
Yeah.
sibone ngeyiphi indlela. And then we leave it up to you to interpret how you see it.
Yeah.
So again, at the end of the day, people are entitled to their opinions. But an opinion of a person who is at an event, traveling with teams, sees things at that surface level, will matter more than someone who's speaking from a different age.
Far
perspective.
removed, yeah.
Yes.
I think you mentioned something important. There's been 2 World Cups, could have been more of a mirror image in terms of how things have transpired,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And has been a kind of a good example to probably how to manage a World Cup and maybe how to learn to manage a World Cup on the other side, right?
Yeah.
And I want to talk about the responsibility, whose responsibility is to educate, because the reason why I asked that, the public that is,
Yes.
because the conversations, for example, that we
Yeah.
were having, or I was kind of like following when the
Yeah.
rugby was happening, which player to play, should Mani
Yeah.
play? This is the reason why, Mani shouldn't be playing.
Yeah.
We were talking about the skill
Yeah.
part, element
Yes.
of that team. There was no mention of color.
No.
If I had to be specific, for example, or
Yes.
most of the conversation wasn't based on color, right? And where I'm going with it is that
Yes.
when I flip the script and then I follow the cricket socials, for example, there's still a massive emphasis on this one because it's not about skill set.
Yeah.
And you're having those nuanced conversations. And again, that's why I asked the question, whose responsibility is that? Is it on Cricket South Africa side being more transparent? Is it the media side, some of how we portray these stories? I'm trying to understand because it was such different universe to be following these conversations. And again, how can we take some of those learnings from the rugby side and bring it, because it just seems like, we're not moving forward on the cricket side.
It's a societal thing. It doesn't even become a matter of whether CSA should teach it, SA Rugby, or the intermarriage of those minds.
Yeah.
There's a responsibility from the bottom up to know and understand that players are players. Players bring different skills. Players bring different abilities. Players bring different backgrounds. Where I think the box and the box and the Proteas differ, and I'll come back to unconscious bias, which is pretty much what was transpired, which is what transpired in the issue of Eland, of the cricket side. The thing with rugby, because rugby is what you call a cheaper sport, it's a far more egalitarian sport where people can come from different backgrounds, can come from different parts, and you can become a Springbok. Yes, it is true that 89% of the Springboks come from 30 schools.
Yeah, saw that.
Yeah.
Yes,
Saw that.
That is true. That is true. I mean, Paul Rosengrave College produced just over 90 Springboks together. And you look at the rugby heritage and the history of those schools, that will kind of explain why. But it also delves you deeper into the history of this country, the history of rugby in this country.
Yeah.
And those are ongoing debates that will never go away.
Yeah.
Cricket's much different, if you think about it. Actually, the expensive nature of cricket always lends itself to the fact that you'll always have more players coming from a high-end school to private sector because a private school, because access is expensive.
Yeah.
Why does Australia do so well at cricket? Cricket is a national sport.
Yeah.
It's also an egalitarian sport that only really takes proper root at club level, where everyone is equal. You see, because you go to England, the bulk of the players in England come from private schools.
Yeah, similar.
You see,
yeah, it's
but when you go to India, cricket in India is a way out of poverty.
yeah.
Cricket in Pakistan is a way out of poverty. Cricket in Sri Lanka is a way out of poverty.
Subcontinent,
Cricket
yeah.
in the subcontinent looks at cricket as a way out, which
Yeah.
is why they seem to embrace pressure moments. Okay, people may say differently about India now with the inability to win World Cups, but cricket in India, and you could say the same with rugby. For some, I mean, Siya Kolisi's story is Makazole's story. I mean, Lucanio's story, for example. You look at those stories. Like for some, rugby is a way out.
Oh,
Rugby is a
do you know
life-changing-
Rasi say pressure is a privilege for some of them
It
because
is.
there are people with
Zero
worse
access.
stories than you have currently.
And
Yeah.
and for some players, I mean, you're training 16-6 at half time. Guys who had the pressures like, who's
Yeah.
back? I've gone nights without eating. Come on,
Yeah.
this is just a
Yeah.
deficit.
Yeah.
It's just a deficit.
Yeah.
So now, with the debates, it becomes an even more like an academic debate on what we expect from South Africans. What are South Africans taught at home? What are South Africans taught at school? The thing is, it is unfortunate that black players in South Africa, players of color in South Africa, are given a far shorter leash to succeed.
Yeah.
And the moment they are seen to be fumbling the bag, to use a social media term, the knives come out for them quicker.
Yeah.
I mean, Ulungani Zama, there's a column he wrote in 2015 where he said particular players have an autobahn to Izingel Phezulu,
Yeah.
while some players
Yep.
have to take the rickshaw.
Gravel.
It's so important. I think he said that 8 years ago, and it's still relevant now.
Yeah.
I mean, a black player has to jump particular, not even hoops. There are so many hoops that they need to jump. Like cricket, for example, cricket is an expensive sport.
Yeah.
Even we sitting here know that you look at a cricket match, you're like, this thing's expensive.
There's no way I'm paying 10,000 rand for one piece of wool.
I mean, and that's not even a player's
Yeah.
edition.
that's not
10,000.
even play- yeah.
That's not even a player's edition.
No,
like-
Chief, you're looking at 20 now.
Yeah.
I'm saying that's not even a
Yeah,
player's edition.
yeah.
Because that's what at that level you need that quality of wood
Yeah.
to play. That's something that you could actually function with at LMS or club level at the most. The moment you get to Izingel Phezulu, yes, you'll get sponsors here and there, but there are those who are at that ceiling who can't quite knock in, but abanale lancedo lala mali, and then they need to make the difficult choice of should I actually continue in the cricket or ndiyopangela ndondle ngemva endlini. So this is where Paul Chu taught me a term of unconscious bias and how these biases tend to affect how we think, how we perceive things. And everyone has a biases because we come from different backgrounds, different things that we've learned about mean. And these things always tend to play out when the South African teams aren't doing well.
Yeah.
There's always we always need to find someone to pin the blame on.
Yep.
And whenever it's a player of color, it becomes so that much more because we have to acknowledge the fact that our difficult past in this country that still affects the present and will affect the future affects how teams how viewers look at certain players.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't just get to where Mani Lipok is by accident.
Yeah.
He's a magnificent player. Yes, things can be fixed, the kicking can be fixed.
Yeah.
But the fact that he's there will tell you that he deserves to be there.
Yeah.
But there will always be a school of thought that feels that there's always a better particular player.
Yeah.
I mean, you went to Graham College, you will know sometimes there will always be particular unconscious biases, even in selection, where you're playing in a team setup and there's a player that you know that player doesn't belong there, but a particular coach, this player has X qualities, as a friend would say, they're particular intangibles this player brings. Some of those things also inform selection at the highest level. They do. But at that level, but the fact that you're playing at that level shows that you actually belong there.
Yeah.
But those qualities then tend to come through. So look, I mean, I don't know how, I didn't do history after grade 9, but I'm very interested to see how history is taught
Yeah.
esikolweni. to see how the people who teach history perceive that history and how it affects the kids, because people would say that now we are 29 years of democracy, but the stench of our past lingers still, and it will for centuries to come, because what happened between 1652 and 1994 is not just going to go away overnight, and but it will continue to affect not just the real politic of the sport, but it will continue to affect the real politic of how this country operates.
A quick question from us then: how does a coaching or management team in 6 years manage to transform the image of one particular federation, from my point of view as a fan, and the other one, I'm talking about cricket now, is still battling with a longer period of time in terms of their messaging, their image of their side? Even today, even this World Cup, 2015, we still, we couldn't bowl death. We couldn't bowl death in a semi-final, and we came out as the reason for that loss. Abantu like Vern should not be playing. But I'm like, in that moment in time, it was man versus man. It was bowler versus batter, and we did not win that battle. But then you leave all that part, and then you go focus on something else.
Look, it goes back to the fact that you always like to pin some political blame on a win or a loss. At the end of the day, as I explained to a fellow schoolmate, they said that we choked against the Netherlands. And we didn't. They sometimes, you need to sit back and look at a game of cricket for what it is. A game of cricket. One team on another day can and will play better cricket than you, and they win. And it happens. But I think we've been so preconditioned into thinking that every loss at an IC game is a choke. We now blur the lines. Because people are saying that, we'll come back to your question and answer it fully. People will say that the Proteas choked in that semi-final. My question is, and having been to Lords, but on a social visit, you look up at Lords on that muggy day, flat pitch, and then you won the toss. And you realize, well, okay, do I bat first, ball first? What's in it for me? And if you play cricket long enough, you know and understand sometimes that the toss is important, number one. But then also a team will only allow you to play as well as you can. If you look at how Australia pulled back that semi-final, that final, they conceded 80 in the first 10. Then they conceded
3.5.
And then
the next 10.
Not even when you condense it, they conceded 160 runs in 40 overs. They only conceded 4 boundaries. Adaptability.
That's a massive word for
adaptability. You see, and that's probably what Australia do better than everyone else. But to come back to answer your question, it's accountability. It's accountability, and also the accountability from those particular group of management, and how the management above them then shields them from the politics. It's unfortunate that our sports will never truly be immune from politics, because politics in sport have been the longest bedfellows. People will say now, it's always the easiest excuse that politics are the reason why South African teams don't do well at the world stage. Other countries are able to pick teams that are not as politically affected by issues taking place. India picked teams that don't have Muslims. Which is a big issue, considering if you understand what's happening from India's political perspective.
And their dynamics.
You'll see that they hardly pick. I think Mohammed Sarah, if I'm not mistaken, I think
Siraj.
Shami are Muslim, but they're a rarity. But
Siraj.
They hardly pick Muslim players in their team. When you go to Pakistan, I think Danish Kaneria is probably the last, if I'm not mistaken, the last Hindu player. And then Yusuf Yohana.
That's why it converted.
Became Muhammad Yusuf. So you understand that, for Australia, for example, there's a reason why they're trying their best to celebrate the Aboriginal heritage of the country. Because they know that their past is mired in how they did not treat the First Nations. I mean, I think there was a vote recently that denied.
So no, yeah.
Yes, there was, and that
be
thing
recognized.
matters. Yes, to recognize them.
Yeah.
Those things matter, because at the end of the day, how many Aboriginal players of Australia picked as Test match players? You have to go back to Jason Gillespie.
Dan Christian is the only not white ball. Yeah.
Yes, I mean Jason Gillespie, Scott Boland.
Yeah.
Scott Boland, this thing, Dan Christian.
Yeah, white
I
ball.
mean, if people who may disagree with this, then we need to read up on John Maguire back in the 80s and how he couldn't make the West Australian team and the politics of that West Australian team of the late 1980s, as good as they were at the time. So every country has its own set of politics that affect the makeup of teams. I mean, England now, at this point, are struggling with the issue of how to assimilate the Asian population played in the cricket.
Yeah.
But when you go back to the 90s, I mean, England's team, which is weird now, doesn't have the kind of color representation it used to have. I mean, you look back when England were here in 1999, 2000, I remember we were infatuated with Mark Lane. And he happens to be one of the few black coaches coaching in a higher circuit in England. But there are other guys. I mean, there's Devin Malcolm. I mean, Phil De Freitas. He was a bit before us. I'm just trying to think another name. I mean, Dan Lawrence, for his name escapes, but he broke his kneecap in a Test match in 1991, 92. I mean, but there were so many players of color who filtered through the England setup.
Awisha.
You see, he's another example. So
Monty
Panasa, I mean, Ben Patel. There's so many that we can name. I mean, Mark Ramprakash should be another example. It becomes so important that when people from outside start to judge the color component and the color politics of South African sport, first immerse yourself in the politics of the country. Then you will see why things are done in a certain way. I mean, you look at some of the borderline racist tropes that were made of Timber and from some Indian, from cartoonists, and the comments that come from Indian players. They're like, for them, it's pretty much straightforward that South Africa just need to pick a particular team. And if that team is white and it's the best, then so be it. Things don't work like that here.
No.
And even if you explain to them that things don't work like that, it will never make sense. And as a Siya Kolisi explained so eloquently in the World Cup, there are certain things that you can only be South African to understand why they happen. And how things happen in our country, we as South Africans understand how and why they happen. I think there are some reports, I think Luke McLaughlin actually wrote a very good piece trying to understand the South African psyche. And he actually summed up by saying that there are certain things that you can only understand by being in England, by staying in England, by being English.
And the interesting part is, like, our memories are always
short.
Kills me, because you can do all the work for 4 years. I'm not saying in the moments, like in the World Cup final, the form is different. And as a coaching staff, you make a decision. That's fair. But to have forgotten how he got there in the first place, the last 4 years since the World Cup, he took over a side that was nowhere under Otis Gibson in 2019. And transformed that side, and he's been part of, top 3 run scorer. I'm not saying in the moment of the World Cup you can't make the decision, but like, what did he do to get himself there? And I think that there was another important part of that. I listened to Pat Cummins talking the adaptability. First of all, the team, Marnus mentioned, that was only announced at 10:30 at night. It shows you the thinking that the coaches were still pondering what team they should have. It took them a while. And the second part to it, he said, which was very interesting, he said, in a World Cup, the decision to bowl first, we thought you could potentially get yourself out of the game by batting first. But at least if you bowl first, you still have a chance. Control. You can have a bad first 10 they did, but you can still bring yourself back in the game. India had a great start, but were held back, and then they never could really punch back and give Australia something else to think about. But I want us to also think about, I would love to know the lessons that we can take going forward? Because I mean, we do have 2027 coming in this, and you think that a fantastic World Cup, probably unexpected from Gerald Coetzee.
Yeah.
Marco Jansen continues to grow in stature.
Yeah.
And then you say Aiden Markram, we're starting to see more signs of what we've been expecting of him for a while. 100 Klassen has been unbelievable.
Yeah.
What can we take going forward now? Because, I mean, like I said, we've had 2 great World Cups to learn from.
Yeah.
But like South Africa, Enoch Nkwe needs to take some lessons going forward because we are hosting the next World Cup.
Yeah.
And what can we do? And then also from the media side, what are the lessons that can be taken?
Before that, also Champions Trophy.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Champions
2020.
Trophy.
Yeah.
Look, the long and the short of it, look, it's easier said than done. But I think what the Proteas now need to do is just embrace the occasion of just playing a game.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, it's just a game of cricket.
Yeah.
And as Sam Kane said this in the lead up to the final, that as much as it's a final, it's a game of cricket. And I think once we start to narrow down the occasion of moving away from it being a semi-final, and again, I'll speak from a position of privilege because I'm not a high-level cricketer, never was, never will be. It just remains a game of cricket. It's a game of cricket where if you execute your skills and take your chances, 95% of the time you'll win. And that's pretty much what Australia did. Australia looked at what was in front of them and dealt with the occasion accordingly. But also, one can't lie not say that Australians are trained to do that.
Heritage. Jose Mourinho will call it.
Trained
Heritage.
to do that. There are people before them who've done this.
Yeah.
There are people in that group who've done it.
Yeah.
So for them, it's the occasion. Actually, they embrace the occasion. They're like, guys, if we don't do this now, when?
Yeah.
Whereas I think sometimes it also goes back to the pressure being privilege, where when you look at the background of a lot of South African players, for example, you don't choose your background, but the bulk of them come from moderate to comfortable backgrounds, where you feel that you have the ability to play cricket, but is cricket a way out for you in life? Is it something that will change your life drastically?
Desperation, hunger.
Yes, and I think that's where I look at the Asian countries in particular, which is why they always seem to find a way in pressure games, because for them, the event becomes more than about cricket, because they will know that in these particular moments, I cannot be worried about the pressure of losing a game when I know that I've suffered more in life.
Yeah.
This is just a game of cricket. And if I lose a game of cricket, so be it. It's a game of cricket. And if we win, we win. And one of the things that is so enchanting about the Australian system is that guys come from varied backgrounds and they meet at the same cricketing plane. And then they break bread over those experiences and then they take them forward. And that, I mean, if you look at guys like David Warner, the late Shane Warne, the guys are from working class backgrounds. But they are, Glenn Maxwell is another example. But they come there, they become such an integral part of the team because they are not from a private course system where they've been coddled and cozied. No, they understand what's at stake when you lose, what's at stake when you win, and how important it is for them to succeed in cricket to make the lot of the family better. And I think, unfortunately, with how our economy is skewed, how the economics of cricket are skewed, it becomes very difficult to now say start a program that will build up players. It needs to be a proper grassroots system that is sustainable over years, where Michael Holding said it once that you don't want a Makai Antini being moved from a particular position to a different school.
Take him out of his environment.
Yes, you want that particular player to develop in that environment and then succeed, despite that, and succeed having come from that environment, which is why Makazole Mapimpi's story remains the most heartwarming one, because Puma is Lalini, Funde Jim Vabaza, played club rugby, Solos, Winter Rose, went through border, was never somewhere near close to Cravenwick. I mean, you look at the guys who played 2008, Cravenwick for Portus Boost Tole was wing. You look at that team, Umakazole Mapimpi would be the furthest person in your mind to
think,
play Border Craven Week in 2008.
Yeah.
When you look at the talent that was around at Port Angela Clash. I mean, I think there was a dude, Leroy Abrams, who was a wonderful wing, couldn't crack that side.
Yeah.
That's how good the wings were in other teams. So you realize that Umakazole wasn't even a thought in a rugby person's mind, but he's a double World Cup winner. Because there are systems in rugby where people can slip through the net.
That's exactly.
But are able to what?
To rise back
meet
up.
others
Yeah.
at the destination point. And I think cricket at the point now doesn't have that.
Yes.
Right? Understandably so that the pathways work. But there isn't a...
Late bloomers.
Not a late bloomers. There isn't a separate ecosystem. A separate but similar, different ecosystem within the cricket environment
accommodate.
that allows, let's say now, you're a 22-year-old. You've graduated. You're like, you know what?
I still want to continue.
Yeah, I could actually play cricket while I was at school. Let me see how far I go. Because there's contracting and stuff. I mean, even in rugby, it's difficult to do that. I mean, Omakazole and Lukhanyo are outliers, if we're honest.
Yeah.
But now, let's say you're a 23-year-old, you've got your BSc degree, but you're like, you know what, man? Let me give cricket a try. But you also need to have a base to do that, because if ulil balale, you also need to think where you now need to pay it forward.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there are also those dynamics that one needs to deal with from a societal perspective. But I think maybe we could be lucky where we have a kid who just grows up like your average kid, like the first team, excels, but puts books first. And then they succeed as not in the like, I want to go back and play cricket. They go to club level, play varsity cup, and then within 4 seasons, you move from being a varsity graduate with Rugby Proteas. And you realize that that particular person becomes so important in the dressing room because they see life differently.
Yeah.
Whereas someone will have played cricket all their life, and someone will just come to you and say, I'm under pressure, and someone will just turn and say, have you ever written an exam that will determine whether you get your bursary or not? And you realize that's a different sort of pressure.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably, I don't know how that can be cultivated in cricket, unfortunately. But I think because of the egalitarian nature of it, you could be like a Kurtley Arendse, like Varsity Shield, and then somehow have one good season.
Yeah.
But it becomes important that you've always had the talent, but you got a break.
Yeah.
And you made that break work for you.
Ukvala, Keimo. I mean, I think on the rugby front, we can continue the discussion because, you know, it's 6 years now of the Rasi Stick, Ninaba era, and it's yielded 2 World Cups. The first one obviously wasn't in that 6-year plan that they had, but
it's there now.
It's there now, and you can't take it away. But going forward, this crop of players, we've already seen Dwayne moving away from the game. We could see a few more that won't make it to Australia 2027. How do we now find? And I don't think it's a lack of talent thing, but how do we replicate the success that we've seen in the last 6 years going forward, and of course in between the World Cups? There's always a debate that the Springboks don't win rugby championships enough, and therefore, you can't really justify whether they're a really good side or not, because in between the 4-year cycles they don't do well against their rivals. How do we transcend the success of the past 3 years, taking into consideration there are rugby championships in between the next 4 years? How do we do that? Which people does Rassi bring in to further this success, so that, one, we can win rugby championships on a more consistent basis, but also go and win and put ourselves in unprecedented territory?
Can I just throw some stats on that as well?
Yeah.
I had something that I was very interested in looking at when they first arrived, 2018.
Yeah.
Their record was 50%, played 14, won 7, lost 7.
Yes.
2019, World Cup year,
Yes.
it went up to 83%.
Yeah.
83.3. 12 matches, 10 wins, 1 loss.
I mean,
2021, it goes down again.
Yeah.
In between the World Cups, it goes down.
Yeah.
Maybe experimenting, widening the pool.
Yeah.
Was 61.5.
Yeah.
2022, similar, 61.5, 8 wins both year, played 13 matches each year. 2023 went up again.
Yeah.
84.6%.
7 out of 13.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, I just wanted to throw that because it's something that I was really fascinated about, what happens in between.
Repetition probably is the mistake. And that's a term that in the interactions I've had with the BOK coaches, it's not about repeating, but it's rejuvenating, refreshing.
Yeah.
I think what becomes very important with what the BOKs do is that goes back to what I said earlier. At where do you seed your inches to gain yards? And I think now, when you look at, as a South African, you're going to look at the fact that we are underperforming in the Rugby Championship.
Yeah.
Yet, we've won more World Cups than New Zealand.
Yeah.
We've won more World Cups
In
than Australia.
Yeah.
I mean, South Africa have won the sum total more World Cups than the Northern Hemisphere has. I mean, South Africa have won more World Cups than Ireland have been to semi-finals.
Yes.
So, sorry, the Irish guys are playing with us, by the way, but unfortunately, I couldn't resist. I couldn't resist saying this. So, look, I mean, it's one of those things that the public want to see a winning team.
Yeah.
Because a winning team means full of stadiums. Because people want to watch a winning team. I mean, look at the kind of work that Hugo Bross is doing with Bafana right now. It's still it will remain a perpetual work in work in progress. But the man's got 12 consecutive 12 undefeated matches, and yet the jury's still out on how he does things. I mean, most probably now it's going to be interesting to see how the Nigeria game will be received, how the Zimbabwe game will be received, because those are most probably the games that will give us an indication of how really good this Bafana team is, because the Morocco game, for all its intents and purposes, attracted a big crowd at FNB Stadium. Both teams had qualified. But Bafana still beat the team that finished at the World Cup. That matters. Let's not underscore what they did in that game. But how do you now take 2023 to 2027? There are going to be teething issues. They're going to be very painful issues. I mean, the BOKs, for example, need to win in New Zealand. That is a non-negotiable. Most probably that will be the one thing that Rassi and the coaching staff he puts together to replace Jacques and Felix will have to realize that South Africa have never won in a one tour consecutive test in New Zealand. They have to go back to 1937. Yes, they have won consecutive tests in New Zealand. They won in Dunedin in 2008, then one in Hamilton in 2009. Yes, those were consecutive wins in New Zealand, but they were split over 2 years.
Yes.
The biggest deal now is to go and win in New Zealand. Because a win in New Zealand will most probably debunk them. No, it becomes very important. No, it's important. Because, I mean, that's what put Ireland on the map.
Yeah.
As proper contenders. They were the first team to win a 3-match series in New Zealand since Australia in 1986. That is like that. It tells you of the difficulty of that particular task. It's not impossible, but it's difficult.
Yeah.
And I think that is probably the one thing where the BOKs have done everything. If you think about it over the past 30 years, since they started playing rugby under the unified SAFU banner that's now become SARU. They didn't win a series in Australia.
Yeah.
Because they went there 93 and lost. But they won the Tri-Nations. They won the Rugby Championship.
Yeah.
But have they won consecutive matches in New Zealand? Is there scope for a 3-match series? Because I would say, for example, the one thing that rugby desperately needs right now is a South African-New Zealand 3-match series.
Wow.
Because that will most probably put to bed, and in New Zealand in particular, and in New Zealand, because they'll most probably put to bed any lingering doubts about South Africa's championship credentials.
Yeah.
Because by beating New Zealand in the final, if you break down that New Zealand South Africa met 3 times. South Africa won that series 2-1. Lost the first test, won the other 2. But those were split
over
a period of time.
Yeah.
Can South Africa over 3 consecutive weekends beat New Zealand and win a series? I mean, probably one of the issues that really hurt several UK journals was the fact that they felt that the Lions could come and beat South Africa and it didn't happen. And it didn't happen. Yes, there were
COVID times.
there were a lot of things that happened in and around there that are explained elsewhere. But I think that's probably now the biggest target. I'm not sure whether South Africa are going to New Zealand next year or not. I think they would, because New Zealand were here in 2022 and they played 2 tests and went to Australia.
Yeah.
That series becomes probably now the one thing. I mean, the current legacy is sealed.
Yeah.
But most probably now what will take it to an even higher level
Yeah.
is beating New Zealand in New Zealand. If they win 2 consecutive tests, whatever is said about South Africa's championship status as the world champs will be sealed. But then what becomes important then is they also need to then build from that.
Yeah.
And then become a team that is ascendant, because I think and you guys have rightly alluded to, and I think fans have rightly alluded to it, that the Boks haven't always looked like a world championship team in between tournaments, but know how to play tournament rugby.
Yes, which is something that the other side needs to learn.
Which is true. I mean, Australia. I mean, it was interesting to know that South Africa had beaten Australia 16 out of 18 times, building up to the World Cup. But what remained interesting was that Australia won the game that mattered, and that's the game that everyone remembers.
Yep.
And I always say, because I remember August time, and I mean, we spent a lot of times on air.
Yeah.
The 2020 series, it started in Durban. Australia won.
Yeah.
And then we played the ODI series that followed. And I said, who will care if we won
A bilateral series.
in October?
Yeah.
No one.
Because the most important part is November when it matters.
Yeah. Yes.
And no one will remember that we lost 2-1 in a T20
No
series.
one-
So it's that part
Yeah.
for me that is
No
important.
one remembers the fact that the Boks lost to Ireland.
Exactly.
No, they haven't beaten Ireland since 2016.
16,
They
yeah.
haven't.
Yeah.
They haven't won in Dublin
Yeah.
since 2012. No one remembers that fact. They remember the fact that Ireland bombed down the quarterfinals.
Yes.
And
They're
South
the world
Africa
Yes.
champs.
Yeah.
That's what everyone remembers.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw the debates around Andy Farrell winning the Coach of the Year. Look, Ireland won 17 on the bounce.
Yeah.
You cannot.
It matters.
It matters. But now, in the bigger scheme of things, you're not South African. You won 11 out of 13. And in 11 out of that 13, you lost Ireland.
Yeah.
But who's got the billy in the bank in Platiklov, which wasn't stolen?
It's like these player of the tournament things and teams. For me, the team that wins should be Andy.
I mean, I can tell you right now, Virat Kohli would trade that player of the
with
tournament.
Manus.
Would trade. I mean, Manus is
Or his 50th 100. You would trade
yeah,
that.
exactly.
trade for
Yeah.
the world. I mean, Manus played a test match knock. And I mean, it again underscores the value of what? Being rooted in the fundamentals of the game.
That's another thing. Part we need. The guys looking at us. And eyeing us.
Yeah.
For me, there's a couple of parts. I want to just close off with some cricket stuff. 7 players from 2015 were in the same team for Australia in 2023.
Yeah.
Being there, done that, got the
Continuity. The other part,
Player management, very important.
player management, coach that they liked. There was a lot of controversy about, obviously, when there were 2 losses.
Yeah.
They got rid of Justin Langer, and there was a lot of questions, former players, why did they do that? The other part for me, 9 players from Australia played Test cricket.
Yeah. In that side.
10 from India played Test cricket. And I was counting South Africa. There was a couple of iffy calls. Some guys are in and out to the side. It was around about 7, 8. The importance of Test cricket to 50 over cricket.
Yeah.
I know there's been a lot of push of T20 and people, this guy's doing well in T20 cricket.
Very important to note. Sorry to cut in.
Yeah.
The 2 countries who played the World Cup final are the countries who invest the most
Test.
in the first class systems.
Yeah.
Yes, Australia are trying. They're trying their best to bring the first class system closer to comfortable times of playing. But these are countries who look after the first class system.
Yep.
And people may be enthused by what the T20 leagues, which is fine.
Yeah.
It's a very good way to sell the game.
Yeah.
Especially in a world where people have got family commitments, have got time commitments.
Cash cow.
You see. But at the end of the day, where does the Springbok and the New Zealand rugby excellence come from? Root and grassroots. The two countries with the best school rugby systems in the world played in the final.
Yeah.
The two countries that invest heavily in the youth systems, and remember that the Indian schools aren't the greatest, but they produce players in mass. And then it's the academy system that sorts out the grain from the chaff. And then that's where the guys then shift up into first class systems. The investment in those levels is where those countries produce the players. And that's where it lives or dies. And remember, it's rooted in what? The public schooling system, not the private, the public schooling system.
I'm a cool.
Yeah, no. In my closing arguments also, I just really enjoyed Pat Cummins as a captain throughout that tournament.
Bowlers can be captains, guys.
Yeah. And I mean, in that final, he bowled Glenn Maxwell for 2 overs. The first one went for 12, I think, or 13.
In the power play.
In the power play. And the second one, one less brave captain would have yanked him off the first over. He kept it on for the second one, got the big wicket of Roy Charm, and I think that's where the game really changed for Australia and pulled it towards themselves, because they could put pressure on Ashreya Zaya, they could put pressure on...
you can bowl to them.
Yeah, you can bowl to Jadeja, you can bowl to Surya Kumar Yadav, who haven't really batted a long time in that tournament. So, brilliant captaincy also from Pat Cummins. Also the decision not to go to the IPL and focus more on the Test Championship and the World Cup.
Struggle in the tournament. Because I actually said to Kate in one of the interviews on Sports Live before the final that India are due a bad game.
Yeah.
But the question is, when are you due a bad game?
When?
Would you rather have your bad game in the middle of the tournament like the Proteas did, or end of this right 20
right at the end?
Yeah.
Kamo, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. I think a lot of people will learn a lot, not only about just the game in general, about rugby cricket, but also just how to go about getting into journalism and how the industry works, because it's such an important tool to disseminate information factually, accurately, and how people can get into the industry as well. So we really thank you very much for your time. I know you're very busy. First day back after World Cup. He's very busy. This guy he's got a diary list like this long, so he needs to get back to that. So thank you very much. Really appreciate it, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me here.
Thank you, man.
And that's it for this episode. What, 12 now?
11.
11. We're on 11. Oh, fantastic. Episode 11. That's it. Thank you so much. Thank you, Nons. Thank you, Lunga.
TP World, Siyabulela.
Thank you so much, TP World Wanderers Stadium, for hosting us again. And of course, please like, subscribe, comment, share, and just let us know who would you like to see sitting here, where Khanyiso is sitting. We've got some other people who are lined up, so hopefully we can get them before the year ends. And we'll see you next time.
Cheers.